I was 45 minutes early to our anniversary dinner when I saw them. Through the restaurant's plate glass window, I watched my wife of 7 years, Elise, run her perfectly manicured fingers through Trent Lawton's hair. The investment banker, my wife's supposed colleague, leaned in and kissed her with a familiarity that told me this wasn't their first encounter. Their table was littered with empty cocktail glasses, evidence they'd been there a while, celebrating something I wasn't privy to. I should have walked in right then, created a scene, demanded answers. Instead, I quietly stepped back from the window and watched. What happened next was worse than the kiss. Elise laughed, that tinkling musical laugh I once thought was reserved for me, and leaned forward to whisper something in Trent's ear. Whatever she said made him throw his head back in raucous laughter. Then he glanced around conspiratorially and pulled out his phone, showing Elise something that made her cover her mouth and giggle uncontrollably. It was the look on her face that stopped me cold. Pure, undiluted contempt mixed with amusement. I'd seen that expression before, at parties, when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't need to hear what they were saying. I already knew I was the punchline. I stepped back, hidden in the shadow of a nearby storefront, and took out my phone. I opened our shared photo album to post the anniversary message I'd prepared. That's when I saw it. A notification from our home security system showing that our bedroom camera had been activated 2 hours ago. We had installed these cameras after a break-in scare last year. I hadn't checked the feeds in months. Standing there on the sidewalk, I watched my wife and Trent in our marital bed. But worse than the betrayal of flesh was what came after. As they lay there, Elise showed him my private messages to her, my declarations of love, my insecurities shared in confidence. They laughed, scrolling through my heart laid bare, mocking each word. Daniel couldn't satisfy a woman if he had step-by-step instructions and an instructional video, she giggled. Trent smirked. We should send him a cheat code. The phone nearly slipped from my numb fingers. Everything in me went cold, then hot, then ice cold again. I put my phone away, straightened my tie, and walked to my car without looking back at the restaurant. I wouldn't be joining them for dinner after all. Some betrayals can't be confronted. They can only be answered. I met Elise Richards at a cybersecurity conference 5 years ago. I was presenting on digital forensics. She was representing her PR firm that specialized in tech crisis management. She approached me afterward, eyes bright with questions about my presentation. Your methods for tracing digital footprints are fascinating, she'd said, but I'm wondering how you manage to stay ahead of criminals who are constantly evolving their techniques. Her intelligence struck me first, then her beauty. Tall and elegant with auburn hair that caught the light, Elise commanded attention without seeming to try. Unlike the technical specialists who dominated these conferences, she brought a different perspective, one that saw beyond code to the human element. Our first date was coffee that turned into dinner, that turned into a walk along the riverfront until 3 a.m. I told her things I'd never told anyone, about growing up as the quiet kid who found refuge in computers, about building my company from a one-man operation in my garage to a respected cybersecurity firm with major clients. You see the world differently, she said, squeezing my hand. You notice patterns others miss. When we married 2 years later, I thought I'd found someone who truly saw me, not just the successful business owner, but the man beneath. A man who preferred listening to talking, who found meaning in solving complex puzzles rather than commanding a room. I gave her everything. A house in the exclusive Henderson Hills neighborhood. The freedom to build her own PR consultancy with my connections and investment. Vacations to places she'd always dreamed of visiting. Not because I was trying to buy her love, but because seeing her happy made me happy. You're my rock, Daniel, she used to say, curled against me at night. The one person in this crazy world I can count on. I believed her. I trusted her. I thought our quiet evenings at home, our shared goals, our intimate conversations meant as much to her as they did to me. I was wrong. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier. It started with small changes. Elise began attending more networking events that ran late into the night. Her wardrobe evolved from elegant to eye-catching. New friends appeared, people whose names she dropped, but whom I never met. "You wouldn't enjoy it, Daniel," became her standard line when I asked about joining her. "It's just industry people talking shop." Then came the subtle digs. At first, they were cloaked as teasing. "Oh, Daniel would rather die than dance," she'd laugh when we were with friends. Or, "Don't mind him, he's happiest with his head buried in code." I didn't mind. It was true that I preferred depth to surface, substance to spectacle. I thought she respected that about me. Then one night, 6 months ago, I overheard her on the phone in our home office. I know, she was saying, her voice lowered. "He's brilliant with computers but completely clueless about people. No, he hasn't noticed a thing. It's almost too easy." I stood frozen outside the door, my hand on the knob. She laughed again, that same laugh I'd heard countless times before, but now it sounded different, sharp-edged and cold. "I've got to go. He'll be home soon. Yes, tomorrow at the usual place." I should have confronted her then. Instead, I quietly backed away, telling myself I was misinterpreting, that he could be anyone, that I was being paranoid. 2 weeks later, I found a receipt for a hotel room in her purse when looking for car keys. The next day, a text notification flashed on her phone while it lay on our kitchen counter. "Last night was incredible. Can't wait for more." The sender was labeled TL Work, Trent Lawton, the investment banker whose firm had recently become a client of Elise's PR consultancy. The man who always seemed to be mentioned in her stories about successful events and important connections. Still, I said nothing. Not out of cowardice, but calculation. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was facing. So I did what I do best. I started gathering information. The tipping point came 3 weeks after I discovered their affair. We were hosting a dinner party for some of my company's investors and Elise's high-profile clients. These evenings were important for business relationships, and Elise usually shone as hostess. I was in the kitchen getting more ice when I heard her voice from the adjacent dining room. "Honestly, I sometimes wonder if Daniel has any idea what people actually think of him," she was saying, her voice carrying that conspiratorial tone she used when sharing gossip. "He believes everyone respects him because of his technical brilliance, but they're mostly just tolerating him." A murmur of uncomfortable laughter followed. "Don't get me wrong," she continued. "He's useful, especially when you need someone to make money without demanding attention. But between us, there's a reason I handle all our social connections. Daniel couldn't charm his way out of a paper bag." I stood motionless, ice bucket in hand, as the conversation continued around me. "Elise, you're terrible," someone said, but with amusement, not reproach. "I'm just being honest," my wife replied. "Some men are meant for the spotlight, and others are meant to work behind the scenes. Daniel's just background material." That's when I heard Trent's voice, smooth and assured. "Some of us are leading men, and some are just supporting cast." More laughter, slightly more relaxed now. I peered around the corner and saw Trent's hand casually resting on the small of Elise's back. She leaned into his touch, almost imperceptibly. In that moment, something crystallized within me. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about systematic humiliation, about a woman who had taken everything I offered and twisted it into ammunition against me. About a man who felt entitled to mock me while sleeping with my wife. They thought I was oblivious, weak, a punchline. I set down the ice bucket and walked back into the dining room, smiling pleasantly as I refilled wine glasses and participated in small talk. But inside, something had fundamentally changed. The quiet, trusting Daniel was gone. In his place stood someone new, someone cold and clear-headed about what needed to be done. Later that night, after our guests had left and Elise had gone to bed claiming a migraine, I sat alone in my home office. On my screen was everything I'd collected over the past weeks. Text messages, emails, location data, security camera footage, a digital record of betrayal. I hadn't yet decided what to do with it all. Until tonight. Now I knew. They had mistaken my silence for blindness, my restraint for weakness. It was time to show them, to show everyone, exactly who they'd been mocking. Planning revenge requires patience. Fortunately, patience has always been my strong suit. For the next month, I maintained our routine. I left for work at 7:30 each morning, returned by 6:30 each evening. I asked about Elise's day, listened attentively to her lies, and kissed her goodnight as though nothing had changed. Meanwhile, I built my case with methodical precision. As a cybersecurity expert, I had tools and knowledge most people couldn't imagine. Accessing Elise's digital life was trivial, not just her messages with Trent, but her entire digital footprint. Private Instagram groups where she shared jokes about our marriage, email threads with friends where she discussed her affair in explicit detail, voice notes she sent to Trent after I fell asleep beside her. "Daniel actually thinks we're trying for a baby," she laughed in one recording. "Can you imagine? As if I'd want to be tied to him forever." Each discovery should have hurt, but I was beyond pain now. Each revelation was simply another piece of evidence, another nail in the coffin I was building for her reputation. But I didn't just collect. I verified. I established chain of custody. I created unassailable timestamps and authentication protocols. When I was finished, no one would be able to dismiss what I had as fabricated or manipulated. Trent proved to be an even easier target. The man was careless with his digital security, using the same password across multiple platforms and leaving his cloud storage practically unprotected. I discovered spreadsheets where he tracked his conquests, including detailed notes about Elise. I found evidence of financial improprieties at his firm, carefully hidden from auditors, but obvious to someone with my skills. Most valuable, though, were the conversations between them about me. "Does he really think people respect him?" Trent had written. "Everyone knows his company only succeeds because you make him seem human to clients." "It's exhausting," Elise replied, "playing the devoted wife to a human calculator." The final piece came when I discovered they were planning a weekend getaway to Cabo San Lucas, charged to my credit card. The reservation was for the coming weekend, which happened to coincide with an important anniversary in my company's history. They thought I'd be busy with corporate celebrations while they enjoyed my money on a romantic escape. Perfect timing. With all the pieces in place, I moved to Phase 2, strategic deployment. This wasn't about confrontation or emotional outbursts. This was about precise, targeted destruction. I created secure servers and timed release protocols. I drafted messages and compiled evidence packages for specific recipients. I built a digital deadman switch that would execute all commands simultaneously at the designated moment. On Thursday night, as Elise packed for her business conference in Chicago, actually her rendezvous with Trent in Cabo, I set everything in motion with a single encrypted command. Then I waited. Friday morning dawned bright and clear. Elise left early for the airport, kissing me goodbye with practiced tenderness. "I'm sorry to miss your company anniversary," she said, "but you'll be so busy with events, you'll hardly notice I'm gone." "Don't worry about it," I replied, squeezing her hand. "I understand how important this conference is for your career." She smiled, relieved at my apparent ignorance. "I'll call you tonight from the hotel." As her taxi pulled away, I checked my watch. 7 hours until detonation. I arrived at my office earlier than usual and called an impromptu staff meeting. My team was surprised. I rarely disrupted their workflow with unscheduled gatherings. "I want to thank everyone for their extraordinary work as we celebrate 5 years of Ross Cybersecurity Solutions," I began. "Today's a milestone for us. but it's also a turning point for me personally. Curious glances were exchanged. I'll be taking a step back from day-to-day operations for a few weeks. Marcus will handle things in my absence. I nodded toward my trusted second-in-command. I've sent each of you an email with further details. I fielded a few questions, keeping my answers vague but reassuring. Then I returned to my office and closed the door. At precisely 2 p.m., as Elise and Trent were checking into their resort in Cabo, my dead man's switch activated. First, it sent a comprehensive evidence package to Elise's firm's board of directors and HR department. The package detailed how she had shared confidential client information with Trent, a clear violation of multiple NDAs and professional ethics codes. It included timestamp-verified screenshots of her mocking her client's security concerns and boasting about overcharging them. Simultaneously, a similar package went to the compliance department at Trent's investment firm, highlighting his financial irregularities and inappropriate sharing of client information with Elise. The evidence was irrefutable, the violations clear. Next, emails deployed to our shared circle of friends and acquaintances. These weren't angry accusations, but simple, verifiable facts. Screenshots of Elise and Trent mocking each person behind their backs. Elise calling Sophie's child unbearable while accepting expensive birthday gifts from her. Trent and Elise laughing about Mark's failed business venture after borrowing money from him. Each message was personalized, showing recipients exactly what had been said about them. At 2:15 p.m., all explicit content Elise had sent to Trent, photos, videos, voice messages, was posted from Elise's own social media accounts. Not by me directly, but through a sophisticated script that mimicked her usual posting patterns. By the time she realized what was happening and tried to delete them, thousands had already seen the content. At 2:30 p.m., her family received their package, evidence of how she spoke about them in private, her criticisms of her father's embarrassing blue-collar background, her disgust at her mother's provincial mindset, her cruel jokes about her sister's weight struggles. The final phase activated at 3 p.m. An email went to Elise from my lawyer, informing her that I had filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and breach of trust. Attached were copies of all evidence, a preliminary settlement agreement giving her nothing beyond what she had brought into our marriage, and notice that the locks to our home had been changed. Similar documentation was sent to Trent, along with a formal notice that I would be providing evidence of his professional misconduct to regulatory authorities unless he immediately ceased all contact with my wife. Throughout all this, I sat in my office, calmly working through routine tasks. I had disabled notifications on my phone and computer. Whatever chaos was unfolding, I would deal with it on my terms, not in reaction to frantic messages. At 5 p.m., I packed up my laptop, nodded goodbye to my team, and drove not to my house, but to a lakeside cabin I had purchased through a shell company months earlier. No one, not even Marcus, knew about this property. As I settled in for the evening, I finally checked my secure email server. The responses were flooding in, exactly as I had anticipated. Elise's firm had suspended her pending investigation. Trent's manager had called an emergency meeting of the ethics committee. Friends were messaging Elise in shock and anger. Her family's group chat had exploded with hurt and confusion, and Elise herself had tried to call me 17 times in the past hour. I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of 20-year-old scotch I'd been saving for a special occasion, and stepped out onto the cabin's deck. The sunset over the lake was spectacular, the water still and clear as glass. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. The devastation was swift and total. By Sunday night, both Elise and Trent had been placed on administrative leave pending formal investigations. By Wednesday, both had been terminated for cause, their professional reputations in tatters. Elise's carefully curated social circle imploded. The friends whose secrets she had kept turned on her when they discovered how she spoke about them in private. Invitations dried up. Messages went unanswered. Her Instagram following plummeted as former admirers distanced themselves from her toxic brand. Her family situation was even worse. Her father, whose working-class background she had mocked despite it funding her education, publicly disowned her. Her mother, heartbroken at the revealed contempt, refused her calls. Her sister, the only one who might have forgiven her, discovered Elise had been sleeping with her ex-husband 2 years earlier. Trent, predictably, abandoned her at the first sign of trouble. When I had my lawyer contact him with evidence of additional financial improprieties, he fled to Dubai, where his firm had an office and extradition was complicated. He blocked Elise's number and deleted all traces of her from his life, concerned only with his own survival. As for me, I emerged stronger than before. When I returned to the office the following week, rumors had already spread about Elise's betrayal. My team's respect seemed to deepen, not because I had destroyed my wife's life, but because I had handled an impossible situation with dignity and restraint. I hadn't aired our dirty laundry, I had simply allowed the truth to surface. My company's reputation for integrity and discretion actually improved. Several clients reached out to express their support, and 3 major contracts that had been pending finalized within the month. I sold our house, too many memories, and moved permanently to my lakeside property, commuting to the office 3 days a week and working remotely the rest. The solitude suited me. 6 weeks after what media outlets had dubbed the Ross revelation, Elise finally managed to reach me through an email address she hadn't known I monitored. "Please, Daniel, just meet me for coffee. Let me explain. We were together for 7 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I considered ignoring her, but there was one thing I needed to say to her face, so I agreed to a public meeting at a cafe near my office. She arrived looking nothing like the polished, confident woman who had left our home that Friday morning. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled back in a basic ponytail. The glossy veneer had been stripped away. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice small. "I wasn't sure you would." I sat down across from her but didn't speak. "What you did?" She began, then stopped. "I understand why you were angry. But did you have to destroy everything? My career, my friendships, my family?" "I didn't destroy anything, Elise," I replied calmly. "I simply revealed the truth. Everything that happened afterward was the natural consequence of your own actions." "But 7 years, Daniel. 7 years of marriage. Didn't that deserve at least a conversation? A chance to explain?" "Explain what? How you and Trent laughed at me in our bed? How you mocked me to our friends? How you planned your getaway using my credit card?" I kept my voice level, my face expressionless. There was nothing to discuss. "I made mistakes," she whispered, tears forming. "Terrible mistakes. But I did love you, in my way." I studied her face, searching for the woman I had married. She wasn't there. Perhaps she never had been. "No, Elise. You loved what I provided. There's a difference." I stood up. "I agreed to this meeting for one reason. To tell you that your relevance to my life has been permanently revoked." "Daniel, please." "Goodbye, Elise." I walked out without looking back, leaving her alone with her cold coffee and the ruins of the life she had gambled away. 3 months later, I received a final update from the private investigator I had hired to monitor the aftermath. Elise had left the country after failing to secure employment. Apparently, she was living with a distant cousin in Australia, working as an administrative assistant at a small real estate office. Trent had been fired from his Dubai position when additional improprieties came to light. His current whereabouts were unknown. I closed the report and deleted it. Their stories were no longer part of mine. That evening, I had dinner with Christine, the intellectual property attorney I had been seeing for a few weeks. Unlike Elise, she valued substance over style, integrity over image. When she laughed, it was with me. never at me. "You seem distracted," she noted as we finished our meal. "Tough day?" I smiled, pushing thoughts of the past firmly aside. "Just tying up some loose ends, nothing important." And it wasn't. Not anymore. The quiet man they had mocked had spoken in his own way, not with shouting or threats, but with the cold, clear truth. In the end, that had been enough. More than enough. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.